how do you find clients that want to pay your price? Get asked this all the time. Like, how do you find someone that wants to pay you $5K for your website a day? How do you make almost $10K for a week? People are like, how do I actually find those clients that want to pay me? Even if it's like half of that you charge, you know, how do you find them? So what would you recommend?
Personally, I would recommend first picking a niche or trying to find clientele that are already in the routine of paying similar prices for similar services. I find that I've worked with a lot of web designers that try and work with like gyms and in-person establishments. And I always like to give the analogy of that. If you think about you're selling the service to a business owner, if that business owner, most of their help, their support they have in their business are minimum wage employees, the idea of bringing you on and paying you like thousands of dollars, it's definitely hundreds of dollars an hour, it just doesn't really make sense to them.
Yeah.
And it's really, really hard to educate on why that's a value and convincing them. Whereas if you...
Like, I will just say that type of company, because I get asked all the time, like, oh, like you do not charge that much. Like, you know, I could, you know, charge $100 for that website. Like that type of company that you described will be paying these people $100 for a website. Totally.
And so I think that also like with how to shift that is what kind of businesses are really used to paying that? What kind of businesses work with agencies and third-party contractors and all sorts of things that are expensive already? And I think that kind of should get your mind starting to think of, how do I work with profitable businesses? Because the example of working with gyms and things like that, commonly we are not talking about businesses that are profitable.
Yeah.
And
not as much.
Or even not at all.
That's
and
true.
I think that when we kind of pivot, I know that Becca is going to be like, okay, but what about online business coaches and things like that? In this online space, it's like this whole vertical that's unexplored. I literally don't know anybody that's not used to paying for services like having a social media manager, a virtual assistant, web designer, copywriter. Guess what? Every single one of those things costs thousands of dollars. And so it's so easy to be that next investment.
Totally. I would say, like, if you want to find clients that want to pay your price, having your niche be people, business owners that are down to pay your price, because they are out there. I would even show this specific analogy is that if, you know, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Chanel, all of those are marketing to people that 100% own Louis Vuitton, Chanel, Gucci, they're down to spend money on luxury items. And that's who they're marketing towards. They're marketing their expensive ass bags to people who are so down to spend $8K on a handbag because they already have 5 in their bag, in their closet, and they're just down to, that's like the type of person that they're selling to. They are not marketing to people that only shop at H&M.
Yeah.
So it's the same exact thing, like market to people, because there are people out there. And I know that there are people like, why would you even spend so much on a handbag? But people do.
Yeah.
People want that. It's because of the experience. So if you want to charge a lot as a web designer and you want to go from maybe charging $1,000 to $5,000 and you want to reach, you know, a community of business owners that will pay that, then you need to hone in on the experience, because that's the entire difference of going and shopping, you know, at Chanel or H&M or even Zara. Everyone knows how shit Zara is. Do you want to be a Zara style web designer? No.
I feel like with bringing up like these like luxury commodity and luxury brands, it kind of does go back to the idea of profitability though, because these brands that have excess profit margins, like when we're talking about like using the handbag reference or things like that, the margins are huge. Guess what other businesses' margins are huge? Businesses that are personal brands, businesses that don't have any in-person establishment, that likely don't have any W-2 employees, that likely maybe are running a 6 to 7 figure business by themselves with like a virtual assistant.
I mean, most of my clients for web design, like
I just described them.
$5 million a year and maybe has a virtual assistant, but half the time doesn't.
And you know what was allowed with that though? Is that because of picking a niche like that, establishing yourself as an authority in that, we were able to market your website in a day offer that started at what, 1,200, worked its way up to 42, now
16.
Started at 16. Now what?
54.
54. That is still an impulse purchase. And I think that for everyone who's listening, impulse purchases and the ability to have an impulse purchase in your offer suite is really important. For you, it actually ended up being this fucking $4,000 website in a day. For me, it was my 90-minute intensive. Started at $497 and has gone up. And that offer is available on my website. For you, you had this like crazy automated process that you're able to book clients. And I remember as we've started to like both kind of scale, I remember you getting onto a website in a days with people that you had never had a single like communication with. Like they booked, they paid, you have everything you need. And that is all because that they are so used to paying those prices. And if you can elevate their business and help them make more sales the next month, paying you, whether it's $4,000 or $14,000, it wouldn't change as long as it's profitable.
Well, you can even look at it as like, you know, a percentage of whatever they earn. If your website is going to cost them like, you know, what, 1% of what they've made that year, if they make 5 mil, like that is going to be a no brainer purchase.
Totally.
Where if you want to have that impulse purchase, you have to think about like, what is the gap between their earnings and what they're going to invest? Because, you know, this is so random, but when the whole submarine went down, do you remember when that happened? I remember seeing people obsessing over how these billionaires spent $250,000 on this submarine. Totally weird thing to do, right? But people were fixated on the amount, like the dollar amount that they spent, because they were looking at the $250,000 through their own perspective. But what they didn't realize is that if you break it down, if you make $80,000 a year, you know, which is like a pretty like decent salary in the United States, it would be the cost of a sandwich in their pocket. So walking into Subway and buying a sandwich is an impulse purchase. If you're hungry, you're not even going to think about it. You're going to go buy a sandwich. That is how much a $250,000 purchase to go on a submarine was for them. So you can think about it in the same regards when you're, you know, offering web design. If you're offering anything and you're like, this seems super expensive, think about who's going to be paying you. Because if you can get it to be for them the cost of a sandwich, then you're going to be with a killer offer.